fuel and you put it in a barge, and because you have all these huge ships out at sea, and the barge goes out to sea and you sell the fuel to those ships. That's bunker fuel. That's bunkering. So companies all over the world have provided the service because it's a profitable enterprise. Now, Trinidad and Tobago sits beautifully between North America and South America, with nice smack in the middle. So a lot of ships, huge ships passing through, would stop off at Trinidad and get bunker fuel. So it's a very lucrative industry. Now, this lucrative service. Now, the Pt.2 provides this service, but at a very minimal level, where they have one old barge. The union has argued, listen, why don't you upgrade this service, buy some 2 new barges, and let the country benefit from this billion-dollar industry? Why can't we, this can rake in something like $2 million US a day, in terms of bunker service. But you know what they did? They decided to dry dock the one barge that they have, not purchase new barges, and now decide to contract out the service. So a private interest will rent or lease or buy 2 barges and then signs a contract with Pt.2 where this private interest gets the revenue and just simply pays Pt.2 a service fee. Now, that cannot be right. The people of Trinidad and Tobago is going to lose. Another example of how we will lose. The Southwest Soldado project, huge project, big project, important facility for this country. It is estimated and projected that if this facility is developed and put in place, that we can rake in some $5 million US per month. Army, come on. You know what happened? The government decided to engage in some strange arrangement where we, in fact, not only not have a facility, but lost 1.2 million US. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. So, as a union, we have been arguing over and over again that we must maintain control of the commanding heights of our economy. We cannot afford. We're a small island republic. We have 1.3 million people. We have things such as healthcare, education, infrastructure. We need the revenue, and it cannot be that we sell out our crown jewels, if you may, sell out our crown jewels, and then we are now left to import almost everything, imagine, including petroleum.
It's very elucidating having you here, Ozzy Warwick, Chief Education and Research Officer of the OWTU. Hitherto, when folks think in terms of union, the simple feeling was that they were there to discuss wages, but benefits are just as or more important than wages, and seeing the direction of the economy, because that will in fact impact on your members, is one of the areas I think that the OWTU stands out on.
And
yes.
Warwick, the the unions, foray into politics went as far back as the National Alliance for Reconstruction when your President General George Weeks was a senator. I want to go even further before that.
Yes.
People's perceptions of unions. Yes, you have your membership, you support, you say what you're doing, and there's also this other perception. People who are not unionized on the job, who don't need a trade union. Back in, it was between 81 and 86 when our former Prime Minister George Chambers proposed a cut in order to stave off the IMF. There was widespread opposition to it, which took us to the doors of the IMF in 1986. When we had that 10% taken away from public servants. Then, during that administration, we had George Weeks, President General of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, as a senator in the NER government. Since then, we've had the OWTU leading into the politics again with Errol McLeod in government now. We've had David Abdullah taking his chance as well. And on the other side of the political divide, we've had traditionally a couple trade union leaders who would have sat as senators for the People's National Movement. We have Jennifer Batiste now, a full-fledged member, actively involved in the politics, though retired as a trade union leader. How has all of this helped the trade union movement, because from it, I am not. The people will be saying that, guys, you all are just talking, you all are rabble rousers, you're creating trouble. What and where are we going with this? You know, you've had this opportunity to be in the belly of the politics, but what has come out of it? What has come out of both Weeks and McLeod? I don't want us to isolate them, but both Weeks and McLeod being there.
All right, let me. Wow, that is such a. I really hope that you give me a nice bit of time to try to explain this, because I think it's so important to try to explain it. I want to go even further back. You see, first of all, Uriah Butler was a member of the Legislative Council. So too was Rienzi. Then later down, John Rojas was a member of the Legislative Council, and he was actually a leader in what was then the Workers and Farmers Party and so on. In other words, we have, even going back to the Trinidad Labour Party, which was led by Cipriani at the time. So the Labour has, as a matter of fact, the political history of Trinidad and Tobago until 1956 has always been one of Labour.
A struggle as well. Okay, that's when it was a struggle.
Right.
All right.
And it was a struggle against colonialism. In other words, the Labour movement at that time was engaged in a battle for freedom, equality, fairness, and social justice. Okay. What happened? Well, independence happened. Not only did independence happen, the colonial state structure and the system of governance remained intact. Now, other persons who would have been part of that radical militant labor movement has always argued, listen, we want independence, but it cannot be independence with the system of governance still intact. We need to change the relations of power in terms of the economic relations of power and the political relations of power. We've argued that. But what happened is that the state apparatus, as constructed by the colonial authorities, feeling comfortable with the rise of a new professional middle class, such as the Eric Williams and so on, and all these doctors and lawyers, they can now take over the state and run the same colonial state structure accordingly. Now, what has happened? Labor leaders such as George Weeks and so on, who understand the tradition of labor being in politics, but also understanding that, listen, here's what happened. The state structure, colonial state structure, is still there. However, we need to continue to be part of the decision-making in one way or the other until people's consciousness can reach to the level where we say as a people, listen, this republic is no longer working for us. It has failed us. We need to reorganize and reconstruct Trinidad and Tobago. A Trinidad and Tobago not as defined by the colonial authorities with the support of a professional middle class, but where the mass of us can sit down and start to re-envision a different Trinidad and Tobago. So the labor leaders, they tried, but remember they are trying within a system of governance that has remained intact. So of course there would have been challenges. Of course there would have been battles. And they may have made small strides ahead, but then there would have been also some defeats as well. We had, for example, you have the passing of the IRA in 1972. That was a defeat. You had even the Ush Act was watered down. It wasn't quite what Errol McLeod, at that time leader of the president of the OWTU, he would have championed a stronger Ush Act in order to protect workers. And that became watered down as well. So he's now got an opportunity, and well, we see where that has gone. Now, how do you counterbalance that? You have to counterbalance labor leaders who end up in the system of governance which has remained intact with independence and militancy on the outside, so that you don't find, notwithstanding he's a former president general, that because he is in politics, that the OWTU, when we see him go awry, that we wouldn't do what we have been doing over the last 5 years. We have to continue to put pressure. As a matter of fact, David Abdullah himself, he knows that and understands that and it was pressure to bear from the labor movement would have caused the MSJ to withdraw from the partnership. So we have exerted that power. We try from both angles, from within, and if that don't work, then we exert force and power from outside. And we will keep doing this. Now, the thing is, Trinidad and Tobago, this is a real contradiction. And that contradiction is why we have the kind of level of corruption, mismanagement, running down of state enterprise, and the selling out of our crown jewels. It is because we have not changed our system of governance. Yes, we fly our red, white, and black, and we have our anthem, but at the end, we did not change the economic power relations. Neither did we sufficiently build consciousness amongst the mass movement, whereby we can hold to account these so-called professional middle class who are now governing our country in a way that is not to the benefit of the ordinary people of Trinidad and Tobago. And these are hard questions. And these times are trying times in the context of the global economic system and its challenges and the crisis that we see there, which will ricochet on us here. So at some point, we have always argued, something got to give.
Ozzy Warwick is our guest this morning. We're talking labor.
Mr. Warwick, then we're about ready to wrap up this interview, but I would like to ask, where in the politics you have tried? I'm going back to the George Weeks issue, and this is not a foundation time as it was in the days of Butler and Rennie Court.
Sure.
Right. So we've had Weeks sitting as a senator. We've had Abdullah sitting as a senator. We have McLeod as a minister of government. What else do you all expect from the politics? Because the joint trade union movement of which the OWTU seems to be the driving force, is gearing up with the People's National Movement, or at least with the opposition forces, or on its own. You can explain that. To have an active part in elections 2015. What do you all expect out of this, knowing your history?
Okay, and first of all,
recent
we have
history, that is.
Very recent. Well, the history is not even history, it's still happening right now because he's still the Minister of Labour. But first of all, we have a right and a responsibility to share with Trinidad and Tobago our appraisal and our assessment of the performance of the government over the last 5 years.
Indeed.
We have a right to do so, and we intend to do so. We intend to do so by we're going to launch a workers' platform where we will be articulating these views, because we think that Trinidad and Tobago have to make an informed decision on September 7th. So our involvement is to assist citizens to make the right choice. We are not saying A or B. We're saying, listen, this is our assessment. Based on that assessment, you tell me, what do you think you need to do? Because you can't tell people how to vote, really. It's their democratic right to vote, however. But we do have a right and a responsibility to show them that way. Now, that is with regards to this election, and that is the position we will be taking. This idea somehow that there's going to be some coalition between the PNM and JTU. Let me just dispel that myth right away. The trade union movement, just like the business sector, you think the business sector not meeting with the PNM and ILP? Oh, come on. Of course they are. So I don't understand when we met. As a matter of fact, and I made this point some time ago, imagine Dr. Rowley, the political leader of the PNM, actually spoke in a forum organized by the Chamber of Commerce, and nobody said a thing. That Chamber of Commerce joining with the PNM.
Well, at the end of the day, all stakeholders must meet with parties and then the potential leaders, yes.
But, exactly.
But then but Mr. Warwick, just for a minute, let's get clear on this. You've gone beyond meeting in the way that the Chamber of Commerce would meet and the other sectors in society would meet. You've been marching, and it's been for a while. So that would lend to that school of thinking.
Well, okay, I understand why it would lead to the school of thinking. I'm just trying to dispel the myth behind it. There is no such coalition. Let me make that clear. No, there isn't. All right, and so I really hope that is as simple as that. There is no such coalition.
Once bitten, twice shy, is it?
Well, let me tell you what we need to do, or what we will be planning to do. We have to really work hard at building our own vehicle. Let's be clear about that. Because the last attempt at that would have been the ULF in 1976. And since then, there's never really been a real attempt to build. And it's going to be hard. I know it's going to be hard, because we're talking about intervening in a politics of culture of race, religion, geography. But you know what? Not because it's hard mean that it is not right. We have to do it. We have to, because I'll tell you, if we don't, if we don't, Trinidad and Tobago can end up in a place that we do not want ever for us or our children. So we will be working on building and constructing our vehicle so that labor's intervention would not just be a question of having a political party, but it's a question of ideology that we can bring to Trinidad and Tobago in an alternative ideology that suggests greater state participation, greater state intervention, greater ownership of the commanding heights of our economy. The appointments of boards are not based on party politics, but is actually based on qualifications, competence, and involve the various professional associations to assist with that. So we have some ideas as to how we can begin to restructure and reorganize Trinidad and Tobago so that all voices, at the end of the day, all voices feel that they can participate in the decision-making of the country. And not because my party is in power, mean that that party is the only party that must make, that has the power to decide for the rest of us. All must feel part of making those key decisions.
Ozzy Warwick, in thanking you, there is just one simple labor question. I want to go back. First of all, thank you so much for your point of view, because agree or disagree, it is a point of view, and all those who contribute to the process is important. The question of the cost of living that is oftentimes seems to be just out of the hands of most people. Would you say that labor workers today are making what can be called a livable wage when you take in consideration the cost of living?
All right, I want to differentiate first of all, the low wage earners. And I feel it for them because we have argued that the minimum wage is not sufficient. Mm-hmm. What the country needs, what these workers need, is not a minimum wage. They need a living wage. A living wage is therefore built on that exact thing that you said, the cost of living. What does it take to buy a certain basket of goods to survive, but then a little additional in order to have at least some form of savings. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing. The second thing is index COLA. What is required is there are only a few companies that have index COLA by indexation. The truth of the matter is the only way workers can keep up with the rising cost of living is if you have what is called an index COLA. Therefore, we will be arguing, and as a matter of fact, after the dust is cleared from this election, you can expect a huge campaign from the labor movement for national indexation of COLA so that workers can really, in terms of the impact of inflation and cost of living rises and so on, the impact is not too severe. Mm-hmm.
Ozzy, I thank you very much for taking the time to be with us this morning.
Sure.
Your point of view is welcome. We wish that you have a very good day, and don't be a stranger. When necessary, we'll be getting back to you. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, sir. Thank you so much. It is Brunch on 107.7. Sharmain.